It is an honor for me to join you tonight. I am feeling very blessed myself to be with you tonight. I know that I am a clergy member, so I could talk till midnight, but I promise I won't do that to all of you myself. I want to...
You all presenters were warned. You have 20 minutes.
Yes, we were given a timeline. I want to start out by sharing a story with you that goes back to my childhood. We're talking about kindness, we're talking about mercy, we're talking about love. My grandfather passed away when I was just short of my 3rd birthday. I had been very close to him, as a little boy would be, but I don't have a lot of great memories because I was so little at that time. However, I remember the night that he passed. And I remember that night for somebody else, not necessarily for him. We had been out as a family somewhere, I don't remember exactly where. We had come home, I was being put to bed, and then I woke up about 2 or 3 hours later. I have no idea what time of the night it was, but as a 2 going on 3-year-old boy, I tended to wake up during the night. And Mrs. Jordan, Kathy, from across the street, comes walking in to check on me. I knew her not very well, and as a child, as somebody strange is in the house at night, you get worried immediately. So I kind of started to cry a little bit, and she said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Your grandpa got sick. Your mom and your dad are with him. I'm here for the night. What do you need?" And she proceeded to sit on the end of the bed and talk to me and just kind of joke around and play a game. She took really good care of my teddy bear, which for a 3-year-old was really important too. We had to take care of the teddy bear as well. And she got me to eventually fall back to sleep. I learned the next morning that my grandpa had actually passed away that night. He had had a blood clot and had passed away. Over the course of the next couple days, my parents made the decision that I was too young to go to the funeral, so Mrs. Jordan continued to stay with me. I remember sitting with her and watching Bullwinkle on television for a little while, and it's funny. It was the death of my grandfather. I loved him dearly. What I remember from that moment in my life is the love and kindness of Mrs. Jordan across the street, because she was the one that was with me. And I think as we go through our lives, we all have those moments. They're moments that are dramatic, maybe traumatic, moments that involve all kinds of different people. And one of the things I have noticed as I have gotten to be into my 50s now is that I tend to remember those moments for the people who surround us with God's love, surround us with God's mercy in those moments. It doesn't necessarily have to be the people closest to us. It just has to be the people who showed God's mercy, who in their own way were really a conduit of God's love to us in those moments and in those times. So having shared that, one of my favorite Bible verses is from Micah chapter 6. It will be very familiar to everybody. Starting with verse 6, "With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before God with burnt offerings, with calves as a year old?"
Your internet apparently is not stable in Dundee.
Oh, okay. Do you still got me?
Barely. Start the verse over again.
Okay, hang on. Hang on. Hang on 1 second. Okay, you got me now? You've got me now? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so Micah chapter 6, verse 6. "With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before God with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? God has showed you, O man, what is good. And what has the Lord required of you? To act justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. I love that verse because it tells us exactly what it is to offer God. You know, we talk a lot about this in this day and age. What can we give to God? What can we offer back to God in return for God's mercy? The truth is, what we can offer back to God is God's love to each other. And that was why I shared the story I did at the beginning, because that was a moment in which, and I know that Mrs. Jordan didn't even think of it that way, but she was sharing God's love with me and in turn with my parents by taking care of me so they could be focused elsewhere. So the question that I ask is, in what ways today do we see people literally being God's love in this world? Margaret said a minute ago, Rabbi Margaret said a minute ago, that you might get a little bit of New Testament. I promise to stay away from that. However, I do have a verse that I want to share that was written by Paul. It shows up in 1 Corinthians 13, and it says that love never ends. I use that verse a lot, reminding people, especially at funerals, that somebody's love for them has never ended. That when we are born, God plants a seed of God's love into each of our hearts. And that as we go through our lives, we share that love. It grows, it blossoms, it becomes fruit, and we share it with one another. And when the day comes that we lose somebody special to us, their love continues to live in our hearts. That can't be taken away. It just can't. It is a gift of God that can never, ever be taken away from us. So I always remind folks that those people who have gone before you, whether they were a major part of your life, every moment of every day, or whether they were a person that kind of came in for a moment and then faded off into the sunset again in your life, their love is a part of us today. So we could go through this long list of all the people who have impacted us, all the people who have been God's love in our lives, and know that that love just continues to grow and blossom into something new every day, and that there will be people someday that name us. There will be somebody sitting here on a Shavuot some night remembering us for the ways in which we shared our love from God with them during their lives. It just goes from generation to generation to generation, and it never ends. It's the faith of God giving us love, and we are to be the stewards of that love in the world. So let me share a couple stories with you that relate directly to that. A couple years ago, we were brand new into this house. We live in Dundee, as Rabbi Margaret said. We were brand new into the house. I was planting a tree. If you don't know me personally, I plant trees all the time. It's what I do. My grandparents were farmers, and I somehow have that in my blood, and I can't let it go, so I plant trees. We had a neighbor across the street who has since moved, but he had Parkinson's disease, which my dad had also. He came over here and offered to help plant the tree. Honestly, he probably was not much help because it was difficult for him, but it wasn't about the help. It was the fact that he came over, introduced himself, spent some time talking with me, joking around, getting to know each other, and literally stood by my side as I planted a tree. And he showed love. He showed kindness. He showed mercy. When we do that, the world is just slightly a better place for those people who we have come in contact with. I want to share a story of my paternal grandfather who lived until I was an adult. I remember sitting one day with him. I was in grade school, and it was storming like crazy outside. Really loud thunder. I was scared. as any kid would be when the thunder is rattling the whole house. And my grandpa picked me up and put me on his lap and said, "It's all right, it's just the angels bowling. That's what God does up there." And so, in that moment, it never occurred to me to say, why in the world would angels bowl? But it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask the Lindaus who own the bowling alley. Is this a metaphor you've heard before, Gene?
That is not. But when you're on the roof of the building, it sounds like thunder.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. You haven't heard that before. Wow. That's what
No, I
they
have not.
tell me at Girl Scout camp.
Yeah, my grandpa used that all the time.
But wait, there's always a thunderstorm on Erev Shavuot because at Sinai there was a thunderstorm.
Ah.
You know that when that thunderstorm hits tonight, which it's supposed to, I'll be under this table.
With Caleb?
But maybe it'll be the angels bowling.
There you go. I'll say this, that in those moments, again, it's somebody sharing their love, their kindness with us, calming our spirit. That is a huge thing for me in my faith, is the understanding that in the storms of life, God is right there with us to calm our spirit. And not necessarily always God, but the people that God has sent into our lives to calm our spirits. When my mom died years ago, I had a friend come over and sit with me for a few hours. He didn't have to. He just came over. He showed up at the door. I didn't expect him, but he sat down for a few minutes, and it ended up being a few hours. And I'll never forget him looking at me and saying, "Don't sweat it. I know you're going to miss your mom. You're always going to miss your mom. That's okay. It's not going to get better. It honestly doesn't. You will always miss her. But the truth is that her love is with you, and you are very much her legacy in the world now. Embrace it." Again, I haven't actually spoken to that friend much in the days since then, but that idea that I am my mom's legacy, that I am the legacy of love from those who have gone before me, has always stuck with me very strongly. And that's what I'm preaching on tonight. That's the idea. We here now, in the year 2020, in our own areas, we've come from different areas together tonight via Zoom, we carry God's love from all those who have gone before us in our hearts in this group tonight. If you think about it, the number of people who have impacted each and every one of us individually with God's love, and then multiply that exponentially, there is a lot of love gathered in this meeting tonight, because all those who have ever been with us, their love is still with us. So now what do we do with that love? It's easy to take a look at the world around us right now, and I said I like to think about God calming storms. This is a storm. It just simply is a storm. The world is a place where people aren't getting along with each other, where people don't trust each other. And I'm not going to make a comment to either side of any issues here, but there is a truth that stands behind all of it, which is that we generally don't trust one another. We just don't. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you are on. It doesn't matter what side of an issue that you are on. And it doesn't matter what you think of the pandemic that we are going through today. What we lack is trust. And why do we lack that trust? We lack that trust, I think, because we literally do not see God in the stranger. We do not see God in the other person. It is easy to see God in our friends. It is easy to see God in our family. It is easy to see God in our congregations and our communities. But when the stranger stands before us, do we see God? I like to remind my congregation that every single one of us has God's fingerprints all over us. We are here because God molded each and every one of us. We are here because God breathed His own breath from deep within His soul into our world and into our lungs. We are here because God wants us and loves us to be here. And therefore we are here with divine intention. And that means that every single person that we ever meet equally is here of God's divine intention, no matter their background, no matter their opinions, no matter their political ideologies, no matter their behaviors. They came from God. We don't have to like their behaviors, but they did come from God. And so the calling for us, and I'm a Protestant minister, the idea of calling is a big thing for me. It's a big thing in the Lutheran Church. The calling that we have is to be stewards of these gifts that is talked about in Micah, to be stewards of kindness, to be stewards of mercy, to be stewards of love, to be stewards of all of those things that have the potential to bring hope and peace into a person's own corner of the world. So as we spend time together this night, we are going to share that love. We are going to be stewards of that love with one another. But I challenge you, in your corner of the world, tonight, tomorrow, in the days to come, be a steward of the kindness. Love kindness. Love mercy. And be a steward of it. Share it boldly with other people. I am very vocal. Some of you know that. I am very vocal on Facebook and other social media areas. And one of the things that is true, if you follow and watch me very carefully, is I have a lot of friends that I grew up with who have very opposite points of view than I do, but I always welcome their comments into my threads with the understanding that as long as you disagree but respectfully, I'm good with that, because at the end of the day, I know that they too are here with divine intention. They too have God's love planted in their hearts. We may see the world differently, but we're still stewards of that love. And so I leave you with this. Go out into the world this day. Be the flower that blooms for somebody. Be the tree that sprouts for somebody. Be the sun that shines in someone's life. Be the light of God. Be the love of God. Be the heart of God beating in this world. Amen.